So in a crazy twist of affairs with the tariffs going up, Nintendo is blaming the tariffs for increasing the Nintendo Switch prices. Now if you haven't bought a Nintendo Switch, I would say you might want to rush out by August the 3rd and pick one up. But just wait, because there is a catch to this. It's only the Nintendo Switch 1 that is getting the price increase. The tariffs apparently magically aren't affecting the Nintendo Switch 2. So what exactly is going on here and why is this happening? And if we actually scroll down a little bit here, there's actually an update where you actually have the new prices. Nintendo has announced that as of August the 3rd, it will be raising the prices of the original Nintendo Switch family of systems and products. So the OLED, the base Nintendo Switch is now $340, the Switch Lite is $230, and the OLED is $400. Now, if you haven't been living under a rock, the Switch 2 isn't that much more expensive than the actual Switch 1 now. This puts the prices in alignment. Now, if you're asking me personally, I just don't believe that the tariffs have anything to do with this. This is Nintendo's way to try and basically fix a problem that doesn't exist, where people are still buying the original Switch to play these games. Clearly, they expected a much faster adoption, even though the Switch 2's adoption is rated the fastest ever. But they are trying to incentivize people to, at least in the US with these prices, to buy into the Switch 2. That is the only logical thing here that makes sense. Now you're probably saying, why am I being cynical about this? Especially because Nintendo is supposed to be all caring and all supportive and, well, they're not consumer friendly, but you get the point I'm making. Well, because, you know, recently they've created a problem and then they've solved that problem by making you buy games on a digital cartridge. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I've pretty much gone 95% full digital. There's still a few games I buy secondhand here and there, but majority of my games are literally just all digital games. But if we go back to the Switch 1, they had cartridges similar to that of the Switch 2. In fact, they're probably the same, just different internals. However, you had a varying number of sizes from 8GB to 16, 32, and to 64. I don't know if there was a 4GB one, but I wouldn't rule it out. So essentially, companies had a choice of different sizes to suit their game. So if their game was 200 megabytes, then they'd go for the 4GB card. Maybe there was even a 2GB one, right? But they'd go for the lowest one. If your game was, 6GB, you'd go for the 8GB card. These cards all have varying prices. Now the problem here is with the Switch 2, you have the card that's basically the key card, which basically holds kilobytes worth of data, and then you have the 64GB card, which costs basically around £12-ish for the publisher to pay for each cartridge. Now the key card will cost them around £1 or maybe a little less. You can see the dilemma that publishers have here. So Nintendo essentially with the Switch 2 has strong-armed them in order to push their games to digital fronts by going to the keycard. Publishers are not going to pay and lose £12 per game just to get those cartridges. And on average, based on what I've been told by people, that's the actual cost of those cartridges. It's crazy that Nintendo is doing this. So with that in mind and how they are strong-arming publishers by incentivizing them to make their games all digital and not give you ownership of your game, as people call it, with physicals, is it really too far, outstretched there to say that Nintendo really is just inflating these prices to try and push consumers over to the Switch 2? Is that too much to think? Now, in my opinion, I would have actually been pushing the Switch 1 as much as possible until it hit the 160 million mark, and then I would have actually started transitioning people over. But that's because I would have wanted to have the most selling console of all time. I would want that title. You know, they were so close with it with the PS2 against the PS2, so why not actually just cross that finishing line? For now, PS2 remains king. But it's clear here that this price increase is nothing more than a sham. I don't believe the tariffs have anything to do with it. At the end of the day, if the tariffs had anything to do with it, the Switch 2 would have increased prices well, and it didn't. We're talking about the same company where the parts and everything, you know, the whole machine are built in the same places. It's not like they're built in different locations. Wherever the Switch 1 is being built, the Switch 2 is as well. So the fact that one got a bump up in price and the other one didn't clearly indicates to you that it's not really about the tariffs. It's about getting people who are looking to get a Switch 1 to reconsider and get a Switch 2. And that is the ultimate aim. Nintendo's also decided that they're not, well, not Nintendo per se, but publishers are already saying, we're releasing 2 versions of the game now, one for Switch 1 and one for Switch 2. So make sure you pick the game that works for you. The bonuses that are available or the performance increases that you get with the Switch 2 version of the game, if you buy the Switch 1 version, you will not get those, and there will be no upgrade path for you to go that way. So essentially, publishers now are treating the Nintendo Switch as 2 different consoles. This probably may have factored into Nintendo's attempt to try and get people over to the Switch 2 as quick as possible. As you know, there's roughly about 150 million units out there. I know people probably have about 10 Switches in their house, but that's beside the point. The fact is there's a lot of units out there, and I guess with new customers coming in, instead of them landing on the Switch 1, they are trying to strong-arm them to land on the Switch 2, much like how they strong-armed the publishers to go from putting the games onto the cartridges and then putting them straight onto the key cards. It's a pretty scummy practice, and Nintendo really had shown their true colors with the release of the Switch 2. They have decided that they are going to be as villainous as possible, but their community still loves them, and as long as their community doesn't push back, doesn't say stop, and continues to say, okay sir, please sir, could I have some more, this will continue and Nintendo just won't change. You know, if you want something to change, you've got to make sure you hit them where it hurts, and that is in the financial pocket. Obviously, no one's going to do that with Nintendo. Nintendo gets away with a lot of stuff. So in this regard, that's my opinion on this. I'd love to hear your opinions, though. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This article then just goes on about even certain Nintendo Switch 2 accessories, select Amiibo, and then Nintendo South Park Amiibo will see price changes, but not the console. The console ain't gonna see a price change. This is all like just their way of just increasing the price. We won't change at this time the pricing of the Nintendo Switch 2 physical and digital Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 games and Nintendo Switch Online memberships. So they're not going to change the Nintendo Switch 2 physical and digital Nintendo Switch 1 and 2 games and Nintendo Switch Online memberships. So they're not changing anything that's actually pertaining to the Switch 2. They want you to not buy the Switch 1, go over to the Switch 2, and while they're not changing the Switch 2 price, they are bumping up a few of the other accessories, so once you're in their ecosystem, they can make you spend a bit more money as well on other stuff. I don't know. Overall, this just seems really dodgy to me. I know they've got a bunch of these hardwares in their warehouses that they're still trying to sell, so why not clear that stock? This seems really odd, but at the end of the day, it looks like they are trying to basically push their consumers to buy a Switch 2, just like they push the publishers to put their games on a game key card and not put the full games on there. That's my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let's have that discussion. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next one, like and subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. Thank you so much for all the support, guys. Really, it's been amazing over the last week or so. Love to see it. I'm really feeling the love. I'll see you in the next one. Remain legend.